The first time the young man flew home for the holidays, he found a spoiled kid sitting in his assigned seat the moment he boarded. When the flight attendant came over, he immediately pointed out the problem. Instead of dealing with it, she upgraded him to first class for free. Meanwhile, a 38-year-old female executive was being harassed by a silver-tongued old man whose flirty remarks made her visibly uncomfortable. The moment the young man arrived, she pulled him into the seat beside her. Just like that, the old man's little fantasy came to an end. Soon, the plane lifted off and climbed into the clouds. Throughout the flight, the executive stayed tense, her mind completely consumed by work. The young man, on the other hand, was fascinated by the reclining seat. It was his first time flying first class, and his excitement soon led to an embarrassing moment.
Madame, oui, vous avez fait votre choix. Je vais prendre le homard. Merci.
Moi aussi, le homard, ouais. J'espère juste qu'il sera un petit peu meilleur qu'à l'aller.
Était sur classique, vous n'avez pas le droit au milieu de la classe affaires.
The smile instantly froze on his face, and he awkwardly exchanged a glance with the executive. Just then, the plane hit severe turbulence. The cabin shook violently, and even the lights flickered. Terrified, the executive grabbed his hand. Her heart pounded like a drum, every beat ringing in her ears, until the turbulence finally passed.
Pardon,
Non, c'est pas grave, y a pas de souci.
After a 2.5-hour flight, the plane finally landed safely. Before they parted ways, the young man finally worked up the courage to introduce himself.
Balthazar. Je m'appelle Balthazar.
Alice.
She responded politely but coldly before walking away, leaving him slightly disappointed. Then he noticed that Ellie had left behind her USB drive. By the time Bart got off the plane to return it, she had already driven away with her best friend. Little did either of them know, their lives had already changed the moment they met. 20-year-old Ellie was a single mother. Ever since divorcing her ex-husband, she had devoted herself entirely to her career. She had become so capable that every time she walked into the office, everyone greeted her with warm smiles and polite hellos. But behind her back, they whispered that she was an old woman who had forgotten how to enjoy life. Fortunately, Ellie didn't care. She stayed focused on her work because the only thing that mattered now was becoming the magazine's next editor-in-chief. But the day she returned from her business trip, her boss dropped a bombshell. He had given the editor-in-chief position to an intern who had only been there a short time. Ellie was completely confused. She was clearly the most qualified candidate, so why hand it to a newcomer? What her boss said next left her speechless. He admitted Jonah's work skills were average, but she had an outgoing personality. She got along with everyone in the company, and most importantly, her creative thinking could help drive innovation. Ellie, however, was the complete opposite. She always looked serious and distant, and had long since lost the energy and passion she once had. Faced with her boss's blunt criticism, she had nothing to say. After work, Ellie dropped her child off with her ex-husband, then buried herself in more work to distract her mind. But when she turned on her computer, she realized her work USB drive was missing. Exhausted, she collapsed onto her desk. When she looked up again, she noticed a note beside her computer. It said a young man had stopped by earlier to return something, but she had been busy. She immediately called the number on the note and got his address. But when she arrived, she was shocked to find it was a packed bar.
Alice! Alice!
Bart led her inside and even introduced her to his friends. She wasn't interested in any of that. She asked where her USB drive was, and Bart admitted he had left it at home. So Ellie agreed to go back with him. But when she saw his tiny electric scooter, the look of disgust was impossible to hide. Still, if she wanted the USB drive back quickly, she had no choice but to get on. Since it was her first time riding one, she didn't even know how to put on the helmet. Seeing this, Bart stepped in to help. Just then, a few coworkers happened to drive by and were stunned to see the boring old woman dating a handsome young guy. They immediately took photos and decided to post them online. Soon, the two arrived at Bart's apartment. When Ellie stepped into his room, it felt like a personal movie museum, with film posters covering every wall. Dirty clothes were piled everywhere, leaving barely any space to stand. Disgusted, she grabbed the USB drive and turned to leave, but Bart chased after her, asking if she'd stay for a cup of coffee and a chat.
Écoutez, je sais que c'est très à la mode en ce moment et c'est vraiment gentil, mais je suis débordée. Puis c'est pas du tout mon genre. Au revoir.
Her words pierced Bart's heart like a knife. At just 20 years old, his impulsive feelings were quietly stamped, rejected by her calm 38-year-old maturity, leaving him alone with another failed confession. The next morning, when Ellie arrived at work, everyone looked at her strangely, leaving her completely confused. She hurried into her office, picked up a book, and pretended to read while secretly watching everyone's reactions. Just then, her assistant rushed in, and Ellie immediately asked what was going on. Instead of answering, he silently handed her a tablet. Only then did she realize that photos of her and Bart from the night before had already spread throughout the entire company. She later caught up with her boss in the parking garage to explain everything, but instead of getting angry, he surprisingly approved of what she had done. After saying that, he got into the intern's car and drove away. Ellie was left with mixed emotions. That youthful passion felt like like spring arriving years too late, but she had no idea whether it would thaw into fertile ground or turn into a muddy mess. After some heartfelt encouragement from a male coworker, she finally decided to take a chance on love. The moment she got home, she opened the wardrobe she hadn't touched in years. Before, work had kept her too busy to dress up. Now, with a little effort, she looked like a beautiful rose with thorns. The next day, when Ellie went to Bart's college to see him, she instantly caught the attention of almost every guy on campus, even the ones with girlfriends. Before long, the two met up. With just a few sweet words, she reignited the feelings he thought he'd already buried. After showing her around campus, Bart successfully invited her out for dinner that evening. He was completely surprised, but even happier than he could put into words. The greatest joy isn't getting what you wished for. It's when you've already given up, and happiness suddenly comes knocking on your door again. That evening, they arrived at the restaurant right on time. The moment they walked in, Bart was fascinated by the restaurant's projection technology. He couldn't resist playing with it and even invited Ellie to try it because it was genuinely fun. Afterward, they stepped onto the balcony for their first real heart-to-heart conversation. When Bart learned Ellie worked in design, he shared a few creative ideas that genuinely impressed her. For the first time, she realized this young man had much more to offer than she thought. From then on, they started spending more and more time together. Ellie gradually got used to riding on Bart's old pink scooter. That tiny backseat became their own little world, while the feelings neither dared confess quietly grew inside their hearts. But during a walk in the rain, Ellie suddenly received a call from her sister, and Bart quietly stepped aside. Her sister had arranged a blind date with a handsome, wealthy man and urged Ellie to come home immediately. Left with no choice, she lied that her daughter was sick and had to leave. After hearing that, Bart wasn't upset at all. Instead, he risked his own safety to stop a taxi and helped her into it. At that moment, Ellie realized Bart wasn't just giving her a ride. He was giving her a heart that always chose her without hesitation. Soon, Ellie returned home with a rebellious mood for the family dinner. She deliberately talked nonsense at the table, then suddenly ran to the bathroom to throw up halfway through the meal. Behind her polished appearance was such a dramatic contrast that the wealthy bachelor was visibly disappointed. When Ellie returned, the entire table had fallen silent. Even her sister looked embarrassed. Just like that, she successfully ruined the blind date. To make up for standing Bart up, Ellie invited him to attend her company's fashion show the following evening. The venue was packed, and even the chairman of the company was there in person. But just as the show began, one of the models slipped and fell. Seeing no one step in to help, Bart awkwardly rushed onto the runway and helped the model back up. His spontaneous act instantly made him the center of attention. Embarrassed, Bart apologized to Ellie after the show for making a fool of himself. Then he walked her home. The quiet night brought them even closer. Maybe they weren't ready for the evening to end, or maybe neither wanted to say goodbye, so they decided to head to a dance club for one more adventure. Although both stayed completely sober, the atmosphere between them became increasingly intimate. Every close glance pulled them deeper into each other's world. After the night ended, Bart walked Ellie home once again. He finally gathered the courage to reach for her hand, only to be gently turned down. Their 20-year age gap felt like an impossible wall separating their hearts. Even so, Bart forced a smile and wished her goodnight. But as he watched her walk away, it felt like someone had poured cold water over his heart. So he decided to be brave one last time. He rushed into her apartment building and knocked on her door. After learning her daughter wasn't home, he leaned in and passionately kissed her. In that instant, surrounded by youthful passion, the last wall she'd built around her heart finally collapsed. Just like that, they became a couple. When the morning sun crept across the messy room, Ellie had already gotten dressed and urged Bart to put on his clothes and leave. She didn't want her daughter to see them together like this. Although he looked a little disappointed, one gentle kiss from Ellie was enough to make him smile again. Later, when Ellie got off work, she found a note taped to a tree with a trail of arrows drawn along the ground. Following them, she reached a bench and discovered a hidden letter underneath. Inside was a cassette player filled with Bart's heartfelt messages. He invited Ellie out again and took her riding through the city streets on his little scooter. No matter how far they traveled, smiles never left their faces. As their relationship grew sweeter, Ellie slowly became more open-minded. She started pitching fresh ideas at work, earning praise from everyone in management. What Bart had awakened wasn't just her ability to love, but the heart she thought had gone numb forever. So during another date, Ellie deliberately said a series of hurtful things. Using that excuse, she ended the relationship. After the breakup, Bart's life became a complete mess. Takeout boxes piled up like mountains. The same TV program played on repeat, and even his heart seemed to shut out every ray of light. But just when he had completely lost hope, Ellie came back to see him. As it turned out, the very next day after they broke up, the company's chairman came to inspect their latest project. But when he saw the promotional cover, he wasn't satisfied with the male model. Even after arranging auditions for new models, they still couldn't find anyone who met the chairman's expectations. Only after spotting Bart on the computer screen did the chairman immediately choose him as the new model. The boss gladly agreed, but Ellie quickly stepped in to stop it. The two went outside to talk in private, where her boss warned that Bart had to accept the job. If she couldn't make it happen, she would be fired. Left with no choice, Ellie personally went to apologize to Bart and invited him to a coffee shop to talk. She told him that modeling for the company would pay well, and he'd also get to spend the day surrounded by beautiful women. The moment Bart heard that, he cut her off in anger and walked away without another word. Even though he was still upset, the next day he had his dad drive him to the photo shoot. While getting ready in the dressing room, one of Ellie's co-workers casually revealed that she'd only been dating him to help her get promoted and earn a raise. Furious, Bart stormed onto the set. The moment he saw Ellie, he kissed her right in front of everyone. But not wanting to ruin the project, he swallowed his emotions and continued shooting. Then the photographer's harsh comments finally pushed him over the edge. Feeling like nothing more than a puppet everyone could use, Bart decided to walk away from the job. Seeing things fall apart, Ellie rushed after him, but instead of asking how he felt, she only begged him to finish the shoot, making him even angrier.
Alice Nantas, mesdames et messieurs, on l'accueille bien fort, on l'applaudit.
Unfortunately, every word she said was overheard by her boss. Just like that, Ellie broke Bart's heart once again, and she paid the price herself. Her boss fired her on the spot. Ellie lost her job, but more importantly, she had lost herself. Sometimes it's only after hitting rock bottom that you finally realize what truly matters. Ellie often replayed the love messages Bart had recorded for her. Hearing his familiar voice brought a little warmth back into her life. Whenever she saw a pink scooter riding down the street, she couldn't help thinking about the man she had let slip away. Then one day, she spotted Bart's poster on the side of a city bus. Only then did she finally realize she had truly fallen in love with the young man who was 20 years younger than her. Determined to win him back, Ellie rushed straight to his college. The moment she stepped into the classroom, the professor mistook her for the substitute teacher and even handed her the lesson materials. Completely confused, Ellie looked up and finally spotted Bart sitting among the students. Gathering all her courage, she apologized, admitting she'd ruined everything, but her love for him had always been real.
On sera vu, revu. Qu'est-ce qui va se passer, hein?
Instead of saying a word, Ellie ignored the judgment of everyone around them and kissed him. Just like that, the two reunited, and that's where the story comes to an end.